Wow. So let's bring in Fox News contributor and former LAPD detective Mark Fuhrman for his reaction tonight. Mark, you watched all that. What did you think?
Well, good evening, Martha. Here we're at Lovelock Prison, beautiful Lovelock Prison, and this morning when we watched O.J. Simpson, I was a little shocked. Not that he got parole. I figured he would get parole. But I was shocked at the way he actually at times even argued with the parole board about the very issues he was here. This was an aggravated assault section of his parole, which is the use of the weapons. He argued that he didn't even know there was weapons, and conveniently I was actually talking to the very detective that filed these cases, and he said he not only knew they had weapons, he told them to bring weapons. That's lie one. The second one, he said, I just went there to get my property. It wasn't his property, and the California courts didn't say it was his property. The detective said, we sent it all back to the victim in this crime. So the shocking part of this is the parole board was lied to, and yet it seemed not to matter, almost like this was a foregone conclusion. O.J. Simpson is going to be out October 1st.
Yeah, I think you're right about the foregone conclusion. There were moments when one of the parole members was asking him, did you take the class that you promised us you would take? He said no. Did you take the alcohol counseling that you promised us that you would take? He said no. And he did not really show remorse. He gave, the old, I'm sorry that this happened, but it wasn't my fault excuse, essentially. So, it appears that they did walk into that room feeling that this was a done deal, Mark.
Well, let's call it what it is. I think the fix was in. They wanted rid of Mr. Simpson. They were going to parole him. Nothing he said would probably make any difference. That sounds a little harsh, but I think that's the reality. And I think you're right, Martha. Everything that he did, I've been to a few parole hearings. I've violated a few people's parole. I've been in these hearings. And what he said about those weapons, the very reason that they're talking about parole, would have kept him in prison in the parole hearings I've been in, but somehow he got out.
You were on the scene at Bundy quickly after the horrific murders that took place there, Mark. What goes through your mind when you hear him say the words today, I would never, ever pull a weapon on anybody?
Well, Martha, you're seeing a classic sociopath, a narcissist, maybe even a psychopath. And he's talking, manipulating the crowd. He was doing exactly what he tried to do in the civil trial. But in this instance, there was no cross-examination where he had an opponent that would actually break down what he was trying to say. That's what got him convicted in the civil trial. That, and there was evidence that was never brought forth in the criminal trial. But when I watch this and I think of what he's saying, I think of one thing. He cut the mother of his children's, the mother's throat of his children almost through all the way to cut her head off, while they were sleeping upstairs in the residence. So that to me, it just boggles my mind how a man can actually live with that.
Yeah, he also said, I've never hurt anybody. I'm not a guy that gets into conflict. I've led a conflict-free life. And, we played at the beginning of this, Mark, you heard it, that frightening phone call from Nicole Brown Simpson saying he's coming back again. You know him. You know his record. I mean, how he can stand there and say that he's never had any conflict with that on his record is astonishing.
Well, it is. And when you look at, we heard one call. There was a dozen. I was at one where he took a baseball bat and took out her windshield of her Mercedes, and she was bawling uncontrollably, sitting with her car. I mean, I saw Simpson when he had that crazy look in his eyes, and then when he calmed down. Well, he did that a dozen times. And how many times did the police not get called? I mean, that's the issue. And yes, he's a violent man, and I doubt if he'll be able to make 5 years of parole.
Wow. Mark Fuhrman, thank you so much. Good to have you with us tonight.
Thank you.